this morning, you heard a lot of what you probably already know, that conditions in Broward County are very bad right now for housing affordability. So we're not going to really go over how bad things are. We're going to talk about solutions. We're going to talk about paths forward, and we're going to talk about tools in the toolbox that we can use to start taking a bigger bite out of the apple of affordable housing. So I'm going to start real briefly by letting our panel just sort of quickly introduce themselves, just to let you know who they are and kind of what they do and how this fits in, and then we'll get right to it, okay? So, hey, Robin, at the end here, Robin Martin, would you tell us a little bit about your organization and kind of what you do in 30 seconds and sort of your lane in the affordable housing community here in Broward? Thank you. Robin Martin.
My name's Robin Martin. I'm with Rebuilding Together Broward County. We're a national organization, Broward for the last 20 years. We provide critical home repairs for senior citizens, people with disabilities, and veterans. Anything dealing with safe and healthy issues inside the home to help them age in place and live in a nice place.
You know, so you talk about, Ned mentioned that 80% of the homes in Broward County were built before the building code. So that's what Robin and his team do. They go into homes that are unsafe, where, you know, people have lived there for 30 or 40 years, and, you know, they make it safe and clean and allow them to stay in their house and age in place. Mandy Bartle, CLT, one of my favorites. Would you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do and your lane in the affordable housing arena?
Sure. I'm with the South Florida Community Land Trust. So just sharing with you, you know, one of the reasons we do what we do is because we believe everything important starts at home, right? Having access to good schools, good jobs, and ultimately your prosperity, it starts with your housing. So what we do is we both build new and we renovate existing housing, and then we put it all in a community land trust to protect the affordability, not just now, but for future generations as well.
That's wonderful, and it really does take a team effort to really move this needle. And Deibert, tell us a little about who you're with and what you do and the role you play in the affordable housing situation here in Broward.
Certainly. I'm Ann Deibert. I'm the CEO with the Broward County Housing Authority. We are a public housing agency, and we administer federal funds addressing the most needy, extremely low income, all the way up to 120% of area median income. But not only are we doing federal housing programs, in the last 15 years we have started developing using private investment through low-income housing tax credits. In addition, with some of the funds that we have earned from that, we have acquired properties and making them affordable and preserving them. I think one of the important roles housing authorities have is preserving affordable housing. We, at the end of a 15 or a 30-year period, we're not looking to turn those units over, but to preserve affordable housing in the county.
That's great stuff. Just a fun fact, Ann's husband was one of my football coaches at high school, at Hollywood Hills High School, back in 1942, something like that. I can't remember. Maybe 43. Next guy on the panel is Ralph Stone. Ralph Stone is one of my favorites. He really is an unsung hero in our county when it comes to creating a more robust pipeline of affordable housing. Ralph is in charge of everything that has to do with financing affordable housing deals and taking applications and investing our money wisely. The $47 million that you talked about, or that Nan Rich talked about, that the county invested into affordable housing this year, Ralph oversees all that. Ralph, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your office and sort of the role you play in this whole thing?
So what Walter said. No,
I'm sorry, I'm a recovering politician. You get a mic in my face and I just can't stop.
I'm the director of the housing division for the county that administers the 3 major grants, the 2 federal and state grants, and on any given day of the week we've got about 175 active contracts. I also serve as the executive director of the Housing Finance Authority. We do about $100 million a year in bond financing, and when you hear Senator Rich and Walter talk about the gap financing program, we administer that gap financing, and right now we've got about 14 deals in the pipeline.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You just think about the families in each of those 14 deals and how it's going to positively impact their life. To me, that's some of the payback, you know. So the next guy up here is a very important piece in the overall process in terms of a housing pipeline, and that's the development community. You know, they take a lot of risk on, they put a lot of resources out, they have a lot of expertise, and, you know, so it's our job in Broward to get things teed up to get the money available, to get the financing available, to attract developers. Tim Wheat from Pinnacle Housing, would you just give us a quick 30-second speech on what you do and where you do it?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Wheat. I'm with Pinnacle Communities. We're a for-profit, Miami-based affordable housing developer. We specialize in rental housing, affordable housing, and have worked with all of the tools that you have heard about this morning since 1997. And I've been with Pinnacle since 2002, and I've been involved in the development of about 1,500 units here in Broward County, either completed or in the pipeline, and I've worked in some capacity with everyone here at the table. We focus on public-private partnerships as for-profit affordable developers, whether that be a P3 development on city-owned land. I see my friends from Hollywood are here. We've worked with them before, worked with the Broward County Housing Finance Authority, and we've done multiple joint venture developments with Broward County Housing Authority. So we're the companies like myself, we're the ones that are in the weeds trying to put the capital stack together to make affordable housing developments work and viable and profitable, well-designed, well-situated, and successful.
And I've had the pleasure of working with Tim and his company over the years. And I'm Walter Duke, and as you know, I'm the co-chair of the Affordable Housing Pillar with Senator Rich and Senator Vesey Einhorn. And I also chair the Affordable Housing Committee for the Broward Workshop. We gave a presentation yesterday to 900 leaders in the county. And I will tell you, affordable housing, and in fact, housing affordability is top of mind now with all of our stakeholders and leaders, and so we're very excited about that. And in my professional life, my company is a leading provider of market studies and appraisals all over the state that pertains to affordable housing. So between that and being the former mayor of Dania Beach, I have a unique perspective in this arena, and so my job is just to sort of connect the dots and collectively help move things forward. So let's start with a couple questions. You know, we've heard a lot of bad news this morning, interesting news, good information, and sometimes you have to hear the bad news. You can't just, hear all the good news, and so we certainly got that. But I'd like to just take a second, and Ralph, I'll start with you real quickly. Ralph, given all the bad news and the challenges we have, what can we celebrate right now in Broward County in terms of affordable housing? What is something you would point out that's a win for us and a win for our community?
Walter, I'd say there are several things. First of all, in 2018, there was a countywide referendum that the voters approved overwhelmingly. I think it was over 70% that created the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So unlike Tallahassee, which regularly raids the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we now have a product, a program that when the money goes in, it only comes out for affordable housing. And following that, the Board of County Commissioners in 2018 also for the first time started funding gap financing. Prior to 2018, the most general fund dollars I'd ever gotten in a budget was $250,000. In 2018, I got $5 million, then $5 million, then 10, then 5.6, then 12.5, followed by, as the Senator said, $40 million on top of it this year. So
$47 million. I'm sorry, just to interrupt. The typical gap for a typical 100-unit affordable housing community is about, what, $5 million, Ralph? Mm-hmm. Like a typical affordable housing deal needs $5 million of incentive to make that deal happen. And so that's what, how many, 9 communities that you were able to put out? That's fantastic. I think it underscores the demand. I mean, when that hit the street, developers lined up immediately because they know there's an intense need here in Broward. Any other victories that anybody can point to on the dais here, in addition to the funding?
Well, I'll just quickly follow up that we not only do big deals, we do small things. And again, with the board's support, since about 2014-15, we've built 100 infill homes just in the unincorporated area. So those are a lot of families with the wages we've talked about this morning that now for the first time in their life are homeowners, and they not only have a wage that lets them participate in the rest of the economy because they have some spending money, but it's also wealth building over time. So it's the big deals and it's these one-by-ones that really make a difference.
That's great, great news, and that is a huge victory. I mean, I really want to applaud our county leadership that they took a bold decision and made that last year, and as a result are going to really enhance the life of 2,500 low-income residents in our county, of which 300 are seniors. And that's the first bite. We're going to keep moving on that. Hey, Mandy, quick question for you. As an organization that does work throughout the region, what are some of the opportunities in Miami and Palm Beach that are missing here in Broward? How can we improve? What are some of the tools in the tool chest that we can employ to get caught up to Miami?
So it's actually right now probably harder to build affordable housing in Broward than any other county in the region. And it's for a few reasons, right? We know we have a lack of land, but it's not just the raw land. We have a lack of density, right? So in Miami, you can build a high-rise apartment on less than an acre of land. You might not have that same density here in Broward. The other thing is the capital, right? You keep hearing about the gaps, the difference between the cost to build and the actual cost that people can afford. And again, in Miami-Dade, they have the surtax, which is a recurring revenue source. Ralph has been doing a great job, along with the senator and the rest of the commission, in building that fund. But at the moment, it's approved on an annual basis, right? It's not kind of a recurring fund that we know that's in place. So I would definitely
it sounds
say
like
the capital.
dedicated funding source, similar to Miami, is really a huge, huge hammer that we need to get our arms around. Thank you. And you know, Tim Wheat, Pinnacle Development, who's on the development side of this whole equation, and we're all in it together. This is truly a 3P all the way around, maybe a 5P when you start thinking about all the stakeholders. So Tim, Mandy mentioned density and the lack of density in Broward, but I think that's changing. And one of the things that the county commission, to their credit, adopted last year was what is commonly known as the Geller Amendment. It's a land use change that incentivizes, affordable housing and density along transit corridors in Broward County. Talk to us a little bit about that as a potential tool in the toolbox, and the need for density, and explain why that's important.
Well, you know, density is important to create economies of scale and to also redevelop sites that are functionally obsolete in a prior use, because that's the direction we're going in. You know,
So
all the other speakers have talked about sites that there's no land, but what there are abandoned shopping plazas and dilapidated prior uses and things that can be converted and developed as affordable housing with if there's reasonable density allocated through this amendment. That's great. What has to happen is that a similar amendment has to be adopted by the varying cities. I think Broward County, see, I live in Palm Beach County, and if you want to talk about density problems, Mandy, Palm Beach County will say, hold my beer, But there is good movement. By the way, Mandy and I are like cousins in the sense where it comes to community land trusts, because I'm president of the Community Land Trust of Palm Beach County, which is a sister organization of the South Florida CLT. So I kid because I care. But the important thing I've been stressing every time I talk is that I'm a believer in form-based zoning. I think that's the way to create a prescriptive development program for each affordable housing development, and to be able to sell it to elected officials and to neighborhood groups, and I think ultimately negotiate a structure that tamps down NIMBY or not in my backyard concerns and allows for an appropriate density.
So density really
more form-based zoning
brings the cost down. I mean, that's the goal here.
Well,
is to
it
bring
brings
the
the
cost down.
viability up.
Yeah, it makes it more efficient.
I don't know what brings the cost down in this world. Don't ask me.
That's a good point.
Because, by the time I sit down and then I stand up again, construction costs will have gone up 5%.
Yeah, the construction costs are really just another huge headwind that we face here, locally, especially in Florida. I see Beam Fur in the audience, who's just a wonderful elected leader here in Broward County, and Beam, thank you. He's one of the good ones, and I believe you're running again, and good luck to you, sir. Beam is, Commissioner Fur is a real champion for home ownership, and I appreciate that. We talk a lot about the impact of rental housing, and that is a way to make the biggest bite out of the apple, but the home ownership piece is also important. I'm a product of a first-time homebuyer program here in Broward many years ago. So on that note, Robin Martin, I know you deal with aging homes and cleaning them up and making them safe. And so I guess what I want to ask you is why is retrofitting and rehabbing old homes, important in addressing the affordable housing crisis? What role does that play in this process?
Yeah, thank you. There's a number of roles. First off, the United Way's Silver Tsunami report that recently came out showed the large number of seniors we have in Broward County and how it's only going to expand. We're going to have more and more seniors, and many of those seniors are homeowners. They are an aging population in an aging housing stock, which is already pointed out. And very nicely, they're currently in affordable housing. Many have lived there for 20, 30, 40 years, paying off their mortgage, living there, being a person in the community. Unfortunately, at some point, they moved into a fixed income status, and their ability to maintain their home, keep it safe, begins to deteriorate, and they just can't. So at some point, if they don't have assistance, they're forced to move. And what that does is a couple things. First, that home then becomes unaffordable for anyone else because it's obviously went up. And either they have to move into an assisted living facility situation, which they don't want to do. Our seniors want to age in place, they want to stay independent, they want to be around their families. So they either go into a situation they don't want to, or they have to move away from South Florida because they can't afford anything else. Basically, home repairs maintain home ownership, which preserves our dwindling affordable housing stock.
Yeah, that's so important, and I've enjoyed so much learning more about the piece that you do in all this. It's really important. When I was the mayor of Dania Beach, I was in many homes like that these folks have lived there for 30 or 40 years, and the place was just falling down around them. So thank you so much for what you do. Hey, Ralph, when you look ahead and you see what are our potential options in terms of really taking a big bite out of the apple and really producing a large number of affordable communities here in Broward, what would you say are some of our options as a county, as an economic body, as a governing body? What can we do? What would be some of those things, or what are other counties doing around the state?
Well, there's a couple things. One is to continue to protect the 2 federal grants and state grants that we currently enjoy. And I'll tell you, and my peers that are out here in the audience, I see dozens of them, know that back about 10 years ago, the combination of those 3 grants was cut in half. It has not recovered. So as we sit here today, I have less in federal and state grants by a half than I did in 2010. So every year there's pushing and shoving going on. So that's a big deal just to retain what we have. We have chased the opportunity to have a dock stamp like Miami-Dade for as long as I've been with the county. It's always part of the county's legislative process. And all we're asking for the state legislator to do is allow us to ask the voters if they would like to approve that so that we can help them in this community. We can't even get over that really small hurdle in Tallahassee. So part of the problem, our South Florida delegation excluded, is the state legislature. Not real quickly, not to get too far in the weeds, but we had about 1 million square feet of commercial development in this county in 2021, and about 6,500 new units, residential units that were constructed. We know from Dr. Murray's rational nexus study, big word, that which we didn't know many years ago, is that new development has the effect of creating a demand for affordable housing. Coincidentally, based on Dr. Murray's study, for every 100 new units, 7 affordable housing units are required. For every 100,000 square feet of commercial space, 7 affordable housing units are required. So if you take those new development that was constructed last year, that creates a demand for over 560 new affordable housing units. Forget about trying to replace their cost. Let's talk about just getting the $50,000 per unit subsidy. That works out to over $26 million a year just to be even. The state legislature, and we've had this going on 2 years in a row, I see my friend Marty Cassini's out here somewhere, has the ability to define affordable housing as infrastructure in the impact fee legislation, like sewer, water, drainage, and schools. In most of the sophisticated areas of the country that have our kind of affordable housing crisis, they've already done that. Boulder, Colorado, you go to their impact fee ordinance, affordable housing is defined as infrastructure. If we add that one definition to the impact fee legislation in Florida, we can at least mitigate the cost that's being created by new development.
Yes, yes. You know, the folks on this stage are all about solutions, and that's what I love about you guys, is you acknowledge the problem, and now you're seeking solutions. And Deibert, I've got a question for you. How do housing authorities, such as yourself, partner with developers to produce housing? How does that marriage occur?
Well, it occurred because of need. Most of the housing authorities have divested themselves of public housing because congressional appropriations weren't supporting housing, their public housing element. So we began by redeveloping, and of course, we had been administrators of government and federal funds. We didn't have the expertise, number one. Number two, you couldn't mortgage public housing. Number three, we couldn't take on guarantees. So we turned to the private sector and advertised for developers, highest and best use. And we work out a master development agreement, that's the business terms. And of course, what the developer brings is the expertise. They take on the risk. They provide the guarantees. And they help shepherd, they had the expertise with the tax credit properties, and that's primarily what we've done. And oh, by the way, all the housing authorities in the county have done tax credit units, and in the last 15 years, we've produced over 2,900 tax credit units at Broward County. So I think that's something, housing authorities are a valuable asset. Yes, we do have, federal funds, but we're also delving into development, and we're also doing acquisition and preserving affordable housing for the community.
Yeah, thank you. It really all matters, and all of those things are really helping, so thank you. So I'd like to just ask if any of you have something you'd like to add that I didn't ask you before we wrap up. Anybody top of mind or something we didn't cover? Robin?
Yeah, just a real quick jump on that. When we're talking about senior homeowners, we're talking about financial risks and health and safety risks. What many of us forget is the only person who requires us to have homeowners insurance is our mortgage company, the bank. And so if you own your home outright, many of these people have to make really tough decisions against rising insurance costs or the ability to live and eat and take care of their home. And that puts them at a vulnerable position because sometime they're going to need it. And after Hurricane Irma, a lot of them needed it. So those are the types of things, not to even mention the safety, falling, trips and hazards that seniors have in homes. So thank you.
Walter, let me share a perspective because we talk about these gap deals and they're expensive. We just came in on the 1,000 units that we approved, that the board approved, and it came in at $47,000 a unit. The industry told us expect 75 and 100,000. A couple of them were up there because of land cost and structured parking. But here's a different way to think about it. Let's say $50,000 a unit land cost. What you're buying is the subsidy on the construction and the subsidy on the rental price every month for 30 years. If you do the math on that, the subsidy works out to $130 a unit for 30 years. That is a good deal. I think where we're moving, and I haven't had this discussion with the county administrator or any of the county commissioners, but we see it in Monroe County, we see it with the state, is we're moving toward a 50-year affordability period. At a 50-year affordability period, you're spending $80 a month for 50 years of affordable housing on a $50,000 a year subsidy. That is a good deal.
When Ralph Stone says it's a good deal, it's a good deal. We trust Ralph. Thanks, Ralph. Hey, Tim, anything top of mind that you want to make sure that we cover today that I haven't asked yet?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have a housing shortage, okay, which is creating an affordable housing shortage in part. We can't forget about the global issue is that there's this tremendous demand here in South Florida for housing. That's what's, the market forces are inherently at work, and they're creating this greater and greater and greater affordable housing crisis. So back to what I was saying before, we've got to start coming up with smart approaches to development and growth patterns and planning and form-based zoning and all these things to encourage development and to encourage developers not to always focus on the higher end of the market, the low-hanging fruit, but the things in the more middle, aside from the affordable housing things that we do. Okay, so the other thing is that I'm a big believer in creating nexuses between the different product types. It's a small part of what we do, but if everybody does a little bit of that, it matters. An example is that we have a program and other affordable housing rental developers do where we rebate 5% of the rent paid during a resident's term of tenancy for a first-time home buyer purchase. So creating those nexuses between a private developer like Pinnacle and one of our residents who can move into a first-time home buyer program with the South Florida CLT is of vital importance. I think we're in a new era overall in affordable housing development. You're seeing it here. You're also seeing it with the leadership of the county commission and with Commissioner Rich, Commissioner Furr, and Ralph. We're not just waiting for the state and federal government to come along, and the county and city governments do a few things and manage those resources and create incentives. Now I think county governments are realizing, my gosh, we're going to really have to step up in the way that Commissioner Rich described with these large bond issues. Palm Beach County, the Housing for All plan was presented to the Palm Beach County Commission, and they're considering a ballot initiative for a $200 million bond issue. So, and that plan has 4 pillars: the financing, community development, community engagement, regulatory reform, and racial equity, which we cannot forget is a vital part of a vital leg in this stool. So I think we're seeing a real transformation. The state hasn't, when the Sadowski gets swept, you hear all of us complain about it for years and years, and it's happened. But now we're in a real pickle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're right. We are. And that's why we're here. We're here to address this stuff and find solutions. And I'm so proud of our county commission and our municipalities stepping up. Hey, Mandy, would you tell us a little bit, educate us about what role do nonprofits play in producing affordable housing units?
Sure. A very important one, right? Because there's 2 things. Local government and nonprofits do the things the market doesn't, right? So it's very important that we build an infrastructure and we build up the capacity of nonprofits in our community. We have access to other resources, and while we have a lot of mission-minded for-profits like Tim's group that focus on affordable housing, when we address and we look at those things and we look at the double bottom line, mission comes first and then comes the money. Obviously the deal has to work, but there's a very important need to build up our nonprofit infrastructure.
Just real quickly before I get to the next panelist, yesterday I made a presentation at the Broward Workshop to 900 business leaders, elected officials, stakeholders, and whatnot. And one thing I wanted to impress on them is that I think the term affordable housing creates, to some, an unintentional bias to this initiative or cause. And the bias is that, affordable housing, these are projects, these are slums, these are negative impacts on local communities. And that's just not the case. And so I really think that moving forward, I think how we are framing this is really, it's a housing affordability issue. It covers all of it. That's the issue. And one way you can address it is by providing more affordable housing, if you will. So I wanted to make that clear because, the typical housing community here in Broward County, Pinnacle at Tarpon River, which Tim's company built on 3rd Avenue in Fort Lauderdale near the courthouse, beautiful building, probably would cost maybe $300,000 a unit to build now, maybe $350,000. So these are not cheap communities. These are not cheap structures. I mean, they are very expensive to construct, which is one thing we're trying to do is get those costs down because it all relates to less rent. Okay. Hey, Ann, who lives in affordable housing? You see it on the day-to-day. What are we talking about? Are we talking about just police and firemen, or who lives in affordable housing? Seniors, special needs population,
Yes.
Talk to us about that. Yes, and yes, right?
Yes.
According to Ned, we all live, in affordable. But talk to us, who lives in affordable housing in your world?
In our world, in our government world, is families that are at the income limits anywhere between 80 and 30% of area median income. Predominantly, we're housing extremely low income families. In our tax credits, we go up to 60%. In our own affordable housing, we're going up to 120% because there is a gap between the low-income housing and 120%. They're the missed gap. They are being affected by the affordability housing crisis. So we do a wide range of individuals. Also, in the government programs, they are targeting specifically special needs population. We look at the veterans. We look at youth aging out of foster care. We're also addressing disabilities, seniors. I mean, it's a wide gamut.
It just goes on and on
It
and
does,
on and on.
it does,
It really
it does.
It's funny, when I go through my normal day and I go to a restaurant and get served or go pick up my dry cleaning, I'm thinking, where does this person live? How do they live here? And and I don't think it's fair to just say, oh, well, they can go find a place to live that's affordable. It has to be clean. It has to be safe. I mean, that's the foundation of a good community. And not only from a feel-good or a good quality of life standpoint, but from an economic sustainability standpoint. Ralph, could you just touch on real quickly some of the, and maybe Tim, you could chime in, some of the positive economic impacts associated with a typical 100-unit affordable housing community, if you will? What can we tell our local elected officials out in the cities as to the positive economic impacts of a new affordable housing community in their neighborhood?
Well, first and foremost, and kind of piggybacking on what Ann said, is that over half of every employee in Broward County earns 60% or less of area median income, which means that we're a service and hospitality industry. So every one of those employees now has a place to live that's affordable, and going back to what I said earlier, then have disposable income to go out and do the things they need to do in the community, including buying food, health care, insurance, and transportation. But even beyond that, and we did a survey a couple of years ago of who is in our tax credit deals. Tim's company responded, and we found it's not only that population, it's essential service workers, nurses, aides, pharmacy techs, firemen, policemen, teachers. When they enter the workforce, they're down at entry-level salaries. And if you believe they can go out and afford $3,000 a month in rent, you're crazy. So that's part of the dynamic of having affordable housing. It's not just for the service industry, it's for essential service workers and anyone that needs attainable and affordable housing based on their income in our community.
So really, at the end of the day, folks that live in affordable housing communities are better consumers. They have more disposable income. They're not strapped. They're not, you talk to we have, 255,000 Alice households in here in the county. A survey recently said 76% of them said their number one concern is how they're going to make their rent or house payment. That's their number one concern. So we're at the tip of the spear here, when we're talking about an issue in Broward County. Yeah, Tim.
You raised the question of the spin-off effects. I don't have the data memorized, but I would tell everyone in this room, guess what? There's actually a study on that all of you who are stakeholders in selling the dream of more affordable housing to people who may say, well, it'll ruin my neighborhood, or, that's not true, okay? It's statistically proven it's not true. One, there's a study, so for those who are interested, Google National Association of Home Builders. They have done a study and they routinely update it on the spin-off effects of a typical 100-unit affordable housing rental development in terms of jobs created, local income for state, local, and county governments, and positive effects. And there's also a range of studies for all around the country done over the last 30 years on the effect of affordable housing developments in neighborhoods and the effect on property values. Guess what? That goes up. That's so shocking. Why? Because we have more stable, diverse neighborhoods.
Yeah. I actually have done some of these studies, and I can tell you that in Broward County, for a typical $5 million investment in a 100-unit community, there's a payback there of 7 to 1 between the construction impacts, the spending of the residents in the community, the taxes, and the operation of the facility. Huge payback. And the $5 million that the county invested, they just invested 47, gets paid back in 3 years. I mean, so when you talk about affordable housing as an expense on a budget, I don't view it that way. I view it as an investment. It's an investment with tangible returns in addition to the quality of life concerns. Hey, Robin, when we talked the other day, you were telling me about some amazing projects you were doing in various municipalities here in the county. Take us through a couple of the cities or the neighborhoods that you've worked in. And I think you said you did 120 homes in Dania Beach or something along those lines. Run us through a few of those. Those were amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much. And one of the things I was going to ask, if I could say one last word, is I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the numbers, because we've talked about a lot of $1 million and a lot of numbers. Last year alone, and we're not the only people doing this type of work, we worked on 436 homes. Since Hurricane Irma, we invested $1.5 million in repairs for people who had no insurance. And so those are affordable housing units. We are keeping people extended in their home for longer. We have partnerships with the City of Fort Lauderdale CRA, Dania Beach CRA, where we're going into specific low-income communities and helping homeowners maintain their home, both in beautification, but also in health and safety factors inside. And so it's been really excited to work with cities. And we're working with the City of Hollywood to do hurricane resiliency, to do windows and doors and roofs, so that in the case of another storm, because there will be, it's just a matter of time, those homeowners are prepared. One of the most cost-effective measures to keep someone in their home is a repair. Talking about $300,000 for one unit, we can keep someone in their home for $5,000 to $10,000. Now, I know density is required. It's not a question about that, but we have plenty of homes that we want to keep affordable until we're required to build the density throughout Broward County that's needed to maintain the growing population.
That's amazing. Now, this is to the whole panel, okay? Yes, let's give them a big hand. That is amazing. You know, I always tell people in my past public service, there were a lot of really aggravating, annoying things, and the elected officials in the room know that, but there were tremendous rewarding moments too, and one of those was every day I got to witness people like Robin and his team quietly going through the community and making people's lives better, so thank you so much for what you guys do. Here's one to the whole committee, because I think this is important. I think that, you know, one of the headwinds that we feel in the county in producing more affordable housing communities is maybe some of the costs and the time delays at the municipal level to get these things built. What can cities and CRAs do to lower those hurdles and costs? And I'm throwing this out to the whole panel because I'm sure you all have your stories. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, I'll start, but before I get to that, I just want to mention one thing, because I know everyone in this room is concerned about affordable housing. That's why you spent your day here and your morning here. But I just want to point out the urgency right now, and it's different than I've ever seen. You know, Dr. Murray showed the numbers and the gap and the difference that people need in order to afford a home. And so if you can't afford a home, it was always go ahead and rent, right? But right now, with rents at $2,500 a month, if you can't afford rent, then what, right? So $2,500 a month, that's $30,000 a year. That's the entire income for someone earning $15 an hour, which is the wage we kind of advocated for a long time. So we have a real issue, which is why, to your point and to your question, it's so important that we have and we come together and we all scale some solutions. And so I want to challenge some people in the room here today. So one, local government, let's use public land for public good, right? Institutions, everyone, whether it's Broward College, whether it's a bank, whether it's a church, take a look at your site, and are you using it? Are you maximizing it? Is there a way to rethink it and reconfigure things and partner with another developer to redo things? To the foundations, can you guys start pledging and investing some of your resources in affordable housing? And not just grants, I love grants, right? I'm a nonprofit, I love grants. But can you start making real investments, making PRIs in our projects and in our communities the way they're doing and the scale they're doing in other markets, right? And those are the types of things that we need all to come together in order for us to actually start to put a dent in this issue right now.
Anybody else? How can cities and CRAs lower the hurdles to produce a more robust, affordable pipeline?
Sure. There are 16 entitlement cities in Broward, which simply means they're 50,000 population or larger, and they get the federal and state grants. But along with the state funding, there's a requirement to have an Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, an AHAC. In the legislation, there's like, I think, 12 or 13 requirements, which include defining your available surplus land and prioritizing it for affordable housing, streamlining your development regulations, like looking at parking, setbacks, density, fast-tracking your development review processes. And as the guy in Broward County that gets the call that says, hey, my permit is stuck in engineering and it's been there for 6 weeks, I make that call and I explain to him, the board has said they go to the top of the stack. So those are the kinds of things that you can do. I don't think there's enough of that is executed. It's hard, it's aggravating. but all of those things, and if you just go to the state legislation and look at the AHAC requirements, those 12 or 13 requirements that local government has to do, all 31 cities could do that and make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think so. We are about out of time for our panel, and I'd like to just take a moment and everybody please give these folks a big round of applause. The most valuable thing you can give is your time, and they have definitely given of their time today, and we really appreciate you. We appreciate what you're trying to do to help our community. And in closing, I just want to say right now, we are at a point in Broward County's existence that we as a community, collectively, the private community, the governmental community, nonprofits, the councils, the stakeholders, all of us collectively on this bipartisan, nonpartisan issue need to take bold action right now. And I really want to applaud Nan Rich and the County Commission and Beamford. They did last year, and they're continuing to lean into this, and I'd like to give the County Commission a huge round of applause. Thank you, guys. Because I think if we make that decision right now, we'll look back 10 years from now and we'll say, hey, listen, we came together as a community, we coalesced as a community, and we took a huge bite out of a problem that's really rising, and not only making this a more affordable place to live for the entire county, but also to make us economically sustainable for future generations. Thank you for your time.